good. Всем здравствуйте. Hello, everyone. Repeating myself, I would like to say that tonight we're truly honored to host a talk by Rebecca Wiltshire, a prominent photographer and co-founder of Unexposed Collective and Women in Street group. Rebecca, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And to start with, I would like to ask whether you have any memories of your trip to Azerbaijan, because we have discovered that you have already visited Baku before. Could you please, before you start with the presentation, share some details of your trip, maybe?
Yes, I came to Azerbaijan 2 years ago, I think, for five days. And before I left from Australia, I asked a lot of people, had they been to Azerbaijan, a lot of travellers, and nobody else had been. I couldn't find any other people that had been to Azerbaijan. So it was quite an adventure. And I just loved it. It was beautiful. I have actually got some photos in my presentation from when I was there, and it was certainly an adventure. I can tell you that it was a real adventure. But everybody was lovely. It was fantastic. We were with a fantastic group of photographers, women and men, on a workshop. Was great. Yeah. So I'll show you some photos that I have in my presentation from it.
That would be great to see them. Do you have any plans for visiting Azerbaijan in the future, maybe?
Oh, definitely. I would dearly love to come back when we can travel again. That part of the world was so, for an Australian, it's just not a common place where fellow Australians travel to. So to me, it was a real adventure. Yeah. I definitely would be trying to get back there again. Yeah. Hopefully sooner rather than later. So hard at the moment.
We also hope that once the lockdown is lifted, we will be able to invite you to Baku and introduce you to our team.
Fantastic. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah. I will have to repeat once again for the audience who just joined us that due to some technical difficulties, our curator, Andrew Glaskov, might not be able to join us at the beginning of the conversation. He had some kind of force majeure, so I will have to replace him. That was quite unexpected, but I don't really want to take the attention from our beautiful speaker, from our bright speaker. So I will just give floor to you, Rebecca, and we would love to listen to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real privilege, and it's always exciting, and particularly with being able to talk about street photography, my own, and women's street photography, and feeling like I do have a connection to Azerbaijan, having been there and just enjoyed it so much and wanting to get back. It's quite special. So I'll share my screen now and do my presentation. It's just photos really. And I guess if anyone's got questions, they can just ask through and you'll let me know, or at the end, if anyone has any questions.
Absolutely, there is simultaneous translation, so everyone will have an opportunity to drop a comment or ask a question.
Okay. Oops. I was just going to do the, I want to do it full size. Now I can't see how I make it full size. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a bit hopeless sometimes on the computer. Oh, here we go.
Gaan принимать, да?
Oops. Okay, there we go. So thank you, everybody. My name's Rebecca Wiltshire. I'm from Perth in Western Australia. Perth is pretty much the farthest away from everything that a city could be. We are known as being the most isolated city in the world. So by international standards, for me to get to another city in Australia is at least a 5-hour flight or a 2-day drive. Just to put it in perspective. So lots of good and bad things about that. Obviously, during a global pandemic, we're beautifully protected and we have had very few community cases. But it's a long way to go. It's a long way to travel to get anywhere, and it's a small city. So street photography wise, sometimes you can feel like it's a little bit uninspiring. I love to travel with my street photography, and I'm going to show you some of my images to start with from traveling. I don't want to do too many of my images. I'll show you some, but I guess the talk will be a little bit about my own photography and journey, and then onto women's street photography, and then some projects we've worked on within women's street photography. The first photo is very early on in my photo days. I'm a self-taught photographer. I started in about 2016. And I tried a few different genres of photography, and I came across the work of Mary Ellen Mark, and somewhere in something I was reading about her, it talked about street photography, a genre I hadn't heard of, and I started investigating that a little bit more, and all of a sudden I was down a rabbit hole, never to return, it seems. I'm very, I guess, addicted to the photography and the process, but also all of the other things that I will talk to you about of how I'm involved, which I love. This image was taken on my first trip to India. It was one of those situations that was going on, and you sit and wait and you take quite a lot of photos and eventually something turns out. But it was very early on in my photography or street photography career and traveling with my camera career. So it's got a special place for me. This one was also taken in India, and it was taken in my early days as well. But I think as an image, when I made this image and looked at it later on in the evening, it really hit home to me that this is the sort of image that probably started to define my style in street photography, or made me feel like, yeah, this is what I like about street photography. I like trying to get these sort of images where there's layers of people and different things going on and quite a bit to look at. And I find that part of the challenge of street photography, that it's not straightforward to get these, but certainly early on in my days, this is kind of the photo where I look back and go, yeah, that was me showing my style earlier on. This was a fun photo that I took when I was in Paris that has been exhibited a bit and awarded a bit. So I just sort of share it with my favourite images. And this one from Tokyo, which Tokyo is a fantastic place for photography as well. This one was taken in February last year, immediately before COVID basically hit and we had lockdown. So I was extremely lucky to get to India then and actually regard how safe I really was to get to do that and then get home sort of safely. And this image has garnered a lot of comment over the year. Obviously, it's quite humorous, and it was exhibited at the end of 2020 in the Women's Street Photographers inaugural exhibition, yearly exhibition they have in New York. They chose this one to go in there as one of the photos. Obviously, it's a little bit funny and the colours are beautiful. This was taken in my trip to Baku, Azerbaijan, a few years ago. And while it's not a brilliant street photo, it always makes me smile and reminds me of how much fun I had there and the people I met. And that particular day was a really good fun day of photography. So it's sort of one of my favourites from the trip. This is another one I made in Baku as well, and was exhibited in the first Women's Street Photographers exhibition in New York. And it took me quite a while to make this image. I was in this place, in this neighbourhood for quite a while, and there were lots of things coming and going. And I probably took about 40 or 50 images in and around this scene over a period of time. And I walked away and came back again, and these kids were still playing on the stairs. And this was the one that I ended up liking the most from the whole collection. I think what is nice about it, when I've looked at it more and more, is that I look at this, the lady in the foreground, and then you look where she's looking and the child pointing, and then you sort of go up around to the children in the stairs and come down, and you sort of find yourself doing a loop within the photograph. And I think that's sort of part of its charm. And once again, for me, it's held up with good memories as well, which is sometimes hard to separate yourself from when in photography. But it was a really good day. Another one at your very famous art gallery. Is it an art gallery? I think in Baku, and these girls had graduated and were going out to a celebration that night. Beautiful. And this is in Baku as well, at the Tesla monument, and just happened to catch this lady cleaning it, but I just love the colours and the symmetry there. In one of the markets there, waited a while with the two mirrors. Eventually 2 people happened to turn up at the right time, and that was the idea, to try and get 2 different people in the mirrors. And this image I was actually looking at for quite a while too, a combination of reflections and looking through glass, and then the boy coming through with the shadow. It's one of my favourites from the trip as well. When I first started street photography, I started investigating, I guess, trying to find out more about it. I didn't have a lot of luck in initially finding other women street photographers, and I wasn't that fantastic on social media until I started doing photography. I obviously got into it more, but I didn't really know a lot about Facebook and Instagram as far as how to search around, and I just couldn't find other women street photographers easily, and certainly current ones. And I was really curious to know, like, what were they taking photos of, and what was inspiring them. And I came across the work of the collective In Public, and In Public had a couple of women, not many, but to my absolute joy, they had this lady, Narelle Autio, who is an Australian photographer, and she just has this most captivating set of images, and I was just fascinated with them. So I just would like to share a few of her images, because I guess for me, when I look at my main project, which I'll show you next, you can see obviously that she's an inspiration, but it was great to find a well recognised and known Australian photographer, street photographer, but she had transferred her street photography skills to the ocean. I grew up in a family that sailed and did a lot of ocean things, and I did a lot of ocean sports and lived on and in the ocean and diving a lot. So I felt like something really connected for me. So this is one of her images, which I love, even down to the painted fingernails. And then obviously they weren't all underwater. This was all done with film photography. So, I mean, it's quite incredible that she was doing that underwater work. It's taken quite a while ago. A more quiet image, but obviously an underwater image as well, with the beautiful shape of the waves. And then this image, which really hit home to me, because this actual image was taken at a beach very close to where I live, that I would go to at least weekly. And she'd obviously been there at some point previously and made this image, which I just love. And I was just like a slap in the face. It's like, you can get out and you can do this. It was such a motivating image for me to see. And I just love the joy, the fact that she's so close within the image, and it's almost like the kids don't even know that she's there. She's a part of it. The weather, the water, the light. In the west, we get this beautiful afternoon light hitting us from the horizon onto the beach, which is captured. Yeah, just love that image. And then So from there, I decided, well, I'd better go and get myself a camera that I can take to the beach. I did go down the beach with my normal camera and it didn't work. So eventually I got myself a waterproof camera. I had to wait a little while. Perth, Western Australia's a long way from anywhere. And so to get the camera that I knew I wanted, I had to wait a little while, and then I got it. And this image here was one of the ones I took in the first few months of having the waterproof camera. I'm actually out in the water too. And it's actually taken at the same beach, obviously not with film. This is a digital camera and a different colour palette for the camera. But this was the first of the images that I took with this camera where I thought, oh, you know, I might be finding something, I might be getting somewhere. And same beach again, once again in the same summer, the first summer I had the camera. And you can see beautiful weather that we have here in Australia, the white beaches and the blue ocean and the sky. We have pretty amazing coastline. Hi, Andrew.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
And then same beach once again, an image that I took, I think, in the same summer as well. So this is the first year I had that camera and was going down the beach and actively swimming or being on the beach with it. So it's the next summer at a different beach where I go to a bit where these kids, if it's a nice day, they just get onto these jetties and jump off. And once again, it's just a bit of luck as well with the splash coming from something that was going on next to me. You get that sort of image, and that poor man that's just about to get a really sore stomach from belly flopping. And very close to me where I live, my closest beach to where I live, which is about a 5-minute drive for me, I'm very lucky, is a dog beach where people go to take their dogs to exercise. And if it's a nice day, people come down with their families and walk. You can walk for miles with your dogs along the beach. And this is where I started to get into the sort of the dogs and trying to get the dogs and the layers of people. I quite like this one, obviously, because I've got the shadow of the dog and the dogs and the child in the background screaming, but I'm also just about to be hit in the lens with that flying toy from memory. But anyway, we survived it. And another one taken at this same beach. This image is probably one of the images that I'm most proud of, I guess, because I did really sort of work the scene, as they say in street photography, and hang around, and I went away and came back. Previously, I'd spoken to these two beautiful women who are in this scene, and we'd had a bit of a laugh, and I'd wandered off and kept taking some other photos. So when I came back this time, they were sort of ignoring me, even though they knew I had a camera, obviously. But they weren't particularly worried because they weren't threatened by me. They didn't feel it was a threat. It wasn't a surprise, but I just was, taking all sorts of photos. And eventually this one came and paid off. So I just, same thing again, I like the way that there's the layers and the different things going on within the one photo. In Perth, it's a bit quiet, but we love if there's an event, like some sort of social event or a festival or something, we try and go to them because we get, it's easier for street photography if there's a whole lot of people together in one area, of course, and we're very spread out otherwise. So this is an event that happens once a year and people go down the beach. It's around Christmas time and they go to the secondhand shops and find all these elaborate, beautiful secondhand clothes and get really dressed up, fake diamonds and the whole bit. And then they come down and they meet up and have a few drinks. And then just before sunset, everyone runs into the water and swims around in the water and jumps through the waves in all of their beautiful gowns and totally wreck them. But everyone's having a fantastic time. And so this is one of my favourite images from that event. It's great. And last year they had it. Fortunately, it was in a non-lockdown time. And a few of my photography friends came and we all got dressed up as well and dived in this time. And yeah, it's a really good fun event. Same thing, my local dog beach, and just an extension of that theme of the dogs and the people and sort of the Australian, bit of this Aussie kind of thing, drinking his emu export, a traditional kind of Australian beer, and the guy at the front's got his budgie smugglers on, which you can almost read, which is a bit of a running joke here in Australia to wear those. And obviously the big tattoo with the dogs, and even down to the the guy's little ponytail matching the tails on the dogs. I quite like that image. That was actually made this summer. So yeah, a fresh one. And this is just a more quiet image, which somewhere in this series, this has been going for about 3 years, this series, and I think that it's probably got many years to go. But we'll see how it all comes together. Different parts of it have been exhibited already. So earlier this year in Sydney, I was part of a group exhibition where 5 of those images in that group I've just shown you were exhibited together. And I've got another one I've been invited to in Japan, in Tokyo, later in the month, where some of these images put together as a small mini series within the series have been asked to go in it. So I'm feeling pretty happy about that. Back in the time when I was sort of trying to find other women street photographers, and I was having a bit of a search around, and I didn't know anybody really else in Australia who did street photography, and I was still very young and naive at it. But I did come across this image and I absolutely fell in love with it. And further to my delight, this lady, this woman, Julia Connington, lived in Australia. She does live on the other side of Australia. So if I was to drive to Julia's for an evening gin and tonic, it would be about a 3-day drive. Yeah, she's a beautiful photographer, and I recommend if any of you don't follow Julia already, then do yourself a favour and jump onto Instagram and follow her. But I saw this image and just once again, I was really inspired by the light and the beauty and the composition of it. And fortunately for me, about 3 or 4 months later, I ended up on a street photography workshop and Julia was on it as well. And so we met. And we've been really great friends since. And I probably, from this point on going forward, the story is about what her and I do together as fellow street photographers and friends and so on. So yeah, that's Julia. We met at a workshop in India, and at that stage, Julia had started doing a bit of work with Women in Street, which is the international group founded by Casey Meshbesher. And Casey knew that we were both going to be in India and asked if we would like to do a movie of women street photographers doing street photography in India. Just a little short video about our experience. And I guess over that we bonded even more. We talked more about it, and we really started talking a lot about, you know, where are all the women street photographers in Australia? How do we find them? Where are they? It'd be really nice if we connected a little bit more. And we sort of talked about maybe trying to get some exhibition together, or we didn't really know what we were talking about actually, but we just knew that it would be great if something happened. And as I said, at that stage, there was really for women-only platforms. There was this Women in Street, which was on Facebook and Instagram, but was more of a platform for, I guess, sharing images, but not so much about sharing opportunities like exhibitions or competitions or learning opportunities. There was another group, if you were into Flickr, which I certainly wasn't at that stage, called XX Street, which is a really high quality street photography women's group, but you had to be into Flickr and you had to know where to go and find it. But that's another, I guess, resource. So after Julia and I came back from India and we just sort of kept in contact, she sent me a message one day and she said, I think we should start a collective of Australian women street photographers, and of which we didn't know very many. And I said, oh yeah, well, that's a great idea. So let's do that. And we toed and froed about a name, and we ended up coming up with Unexposed Collective because it didn't already exist on Instagram or Facebook, essentially, from all of the names we picked. And basically, I guess the essence behind it was exposing the unexposed. So the idea was that it would be a platform, as it says there, for active and emerging Australian women street photographers, but we also include non-binary and intersex in that. Because we do have some photographers who identify as that in Australia, but don't also feel like they really belong in the men's sort of groups. So yeah, that's our group that we started. That was a bit over 3 years ago now. More recently, Unexposed Collective back in the day was Australian only, but what happened in COVID, well, we put together this big exhibition, which I'm going to show you soon. But also in COVID, so many women internationally, and we had started to connect with these women, were in lockdown, and they were wanting to kind of get involved with us as well. So we changed Unexposed to being a global platform, continuing the things that we did, which we felt were different to what Women in Street do. But the Australian women wanted to keep their little group where they talked, and we did more local orientated stuff. So we created a little Australasia one to keep that that local focus, I guess. And we were really lucky to team up with two people who'd been quite active in the group, Linda McLean and Susan Brugnolti, who I'll quickly show you some of their photos. They're lovely women, but brilliant photographers. So this is Linda McLean, an example of her work. Obviously you can see fantastic street image, totally candid. And this is Susan Brugnolti from Melbourne. They've been helping us with that one. And then around the same time, Julia and I have been actually talking probably for a lot longer about creating a South Asian group, because we'd been to India quite a bit, and there's so many fantastic women street photographers in South Asia. The South Asian photographers and Thai photographers have really started doing well internationally, but they're predominantly men. It's a bit harder to find the women street photographers over there. There's certainly nowhere near as many women street photographers in South Asia as there are male street photographers, but there's some really good talent there. So South Asia being India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan. What else have I got there? Oh, Maldives as well. So we thought, similar thing, why don't we get these women together and try and help them, I don't know, what the problem might be, maybe feel more confident, maybe see what other opportunities are out there for them that they can do. Obviously, there's a big cultural difference, which we didn't understand, and also potentially a financial difference for some of the women as well. Fortunately, on previous trips to India, we'd met up with a fantastic woman named Debrani Das, who's a really talented street photographer. I'll show you some of Debrani's images. That's one of them. Another, she's a very talented street photographer, and we get on with her really well. So she's been she's co-founded it with us, and it's, we obviously needed a South Asian person to help us, and so she's been doing that with us. So that's sort of our current projects. Early on in the days when we first started Unexposed, it was just Australian, and we decided, let's try and get an exhibition, which was the original aim of Australian women street photographers. And there's a big photo festival in Australia called Head On Photo Festival. It's the biggest photo festival. And so sort of a bit naively, we put in an application, and you had to feature 10 photos. So we got together 10 women and put their photos in. And they came back and said, yes, we would love to have you. And not only that, you'd be a featured exhibition, which means you get extra publicity and a bit of extra help. So that was, fantastic. Street photography still doesn't get really a high exposure in broad genre exhibitions. So that was even better that it was this women's only street photography group. And so we had this exhibition called Exposed. Essentially, the unexposed were now exposed, and that was all of the Australian women. After that, we once again were still continuing to work with Casey Besher in Women in Street, and sort of as times were changing. So, I mean, what we were feeling initially when we started it was that there's a lot of great women street photographers, but generally when you looked at judging panels on street photography competitions or talking panels on street photography, things, or even Winners' Circle, very few women were represented, even though there's a large amount of really talented women street photographers internationally. So we just kind of didn't really see many of them, and that was part of what we were trying to do. So we were working a little bit, doing some other things with Women in Street with Casey Besher, and San Francisco Street Photo, which is one of the biggest international street photography exhibitions, invited Women in Street to exhibit, and they would pay for it. And it was sort of like, well, you can't say no to that sort of opportunity. And so this is a few years ago. So we put together an exhibition of diptychs of women, of as many women as we could. And it was really well received in San Francisco. And then, so after that, Julia and I decided that we needed to do, that this was the next year for the Head On Photo Festival in Australia. We decided that we need to put in another exhibition. So let's do an exhibition of diptychs, and let's do it not just of unexposed, but let's try and do it international. So we contacted Casey again from Women in Street and asked if she would help us, because we were still just Australian only then. And she very kindly said, I don't want to be part of curating it because it's a really big job to curate it all. But she said that she was very happy for us to use her platform, her international platform, to try and get the submissions. So Unexposed Collective and Women in Street worked together, and we called for entries, and we're going to call it Double Trouble. So we called for entries, and basically we called for people to submit a strong image that could be used in a diptych, and we got hundreds of submissions. And so at that point, at the end of that month, Julie and I got these hundreds of submissions and selected, actually we got some external help from from Julie Hrdova, who's a very well-known and high-level woman street photographer, and she basically selected the 60, but we kind of, well, the three of us did in the end, but she ran her, unbiased eye over it all. So we had about 60 really good images, but we still had lots of other really good images as well. Anyway, so the next month on Unexposed and the Women in Street platforms, every day we would post 3 images, and we asked the women out there internationally to post their own images that would make the diptych. So that went on for a month. And by the end of the month, we had probably, I've written 600 plus, but I think from memory, it was close to 1,000 images in a big pool of images. With the matching process, some of the matches ended up being really good, but some of them probably weren't so good, but we still had all of these really good, high quality images to work with. And what we found then going over it a second time was after we took out the images that had been matched well, we could actually match within our pool of 600 plus images. We actually managed to find more matches. And the idea was to exhibit as many women as possible, but every woman would only get 1 image in there. So we were trying to get as many in. And then after that, we still had a really strong body of images and a really strong body of photographers, but we hadn't found the right match for them yet. And so one by one, we started going through all of their Instagram accounts to find images that match some of the ones that we already had submitted. This took hundreds of hours. We just didn't know how much we'd got ourselves down a rabbit hole with it. But in the end, we came up with 60 diptychs, which we curated together with this, so 120 different women from all over the world. And we, and then within that, we also had to sequence them so that when they rolled out, they were in a sequence themselves. So people, if you've done sequencing for series and books, you know that sequencing is quite hard, let alone trying to do that with 120 different photographers, 60 different diptychs, and trying to get that into a nice, flowing sort of run of images. It's a little bit of a challenge. But just for people who are interested in doing diptychs, they might want to just see how we sort of put them together. Adrian Bale-Harvey from USA and Sophia Sebastian from USA, top and bottom. You can see quite clearly that we have colour matches in this one, the black silhouettes and the black, and also the sort of the lines and the geometry as an example. This one slightly different in that you've got the top half being the top half of women and the bottom half being the bottom half of women. And this is quite not an uncommon way to make a diptych, is when you've got 2 halves of a person and sort of trying to match them together, but, also having to come together with a colour palette that worked as well. 2 great photographers, the top one, Alyssa Mariotti, a good friend of mine from Italy, and Nikki Gludi from the USA, both really special photographers. We have this one, which is a slightly different theme again, in that obviously we've got some colour matching, but it's also really about the movement. the two different images having this sort of commonality in movement, that they work together. Regula Shumi from Switzerland and Anu Esko from Finland. Anu was on our trip to Azerbaijan when we came, so I know Anu well also. And then something more like this, which, you know, some of the images make a story, some of them are just good fun, but beautiful images. And we had this beautiful image submitted by Zara Dogan from Turkey, and Dan Benjamin actually put this image to it, and we just think it's fun and fabulous. So we put the submission in, and yes, they came back and said, we would love to have you, and yes, we'd like to make you a featured exhibition again. So that was 2 years in a row, and we were pretty happy about that. As you can see from the poster, opening in 2 weeks, and then that never happened. So that was supposed to be May last year, and of course, COVID and lockdown, there was no exhibitions and no galleries, and they turned it into an online festival, which they did a really good job of turning it around quickly. But then as I said, with Australia, mostly the COVID's been suppressed quite well. And there've been times when we've had just been able to get out and do pretty much normal again. And this is Bondi Beach. And so they managed to hold the physical exhibition later in the year. And much to our delight, they said, we want to put you down at Bondi Beach, which at that time with the pandemic was the busiest place in town because the city was still very quiet. People weren't going out much and working from home. And there's a big boardwalk, I don't know, it might go for a kilometre, and basically all 60 images were spread out across this boardwalk along Bondi Beach. Look at the weather and everyone's there sunbaking. It was probably the best place in Australia, if not the world. You could see an exhibition at that time with everything going on. I mean, tens of thousands of people would have walked past this exhibition, whether they were photographers, street photographers, or just the common public. So we were just absolutely ecstatic about that. So yeah, that was a really good result. So now I'd like to actually show you the exhibition. It was being put to music, and I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I think somebody from there is going to play the Double Trouble video for us. Sit back and enjoy. Okay. Thank you. So that was our Double Trouble exhibition.
Sorry. Are we about to share the second video, to play the second video?
Nearly.
Okay.
Nearly. So after we'd done that, the Indian Photo Festival, which was a very large international photo festival, but certainly India's biggest photo festival, advertised for submissions. And this year they weren't charging because of COVID, and it would mainly be online. So we decided that we would have another go at this curating and business. And we had the two groups, the Australasia group and the South Asia group, sort of the sister groups. And we decided to create an exhibition that had one woman from Australasia and one from South Asia, and each diptych would have them. And I guess there's a little bit of an experiment between to see how we, you know, as women from different cultures photographed and how they could be put together and how that would work out. And we got accepted by the Indian Photo Festival, but not only that, they had 10 spots for exhibitions that they would be holding live. And so we actually had a full outdoor exhibition in a big park near their art gallery where it was held, and we didn't have to pay for any of it. This was probably pretty amazing because it's such a big exhibition and so widely known, but also so many of the women from South Asia had either never been exhibited or never made it into the Indian Photo Festival, which is such a big deal. So it was a really, really nice thing to see the excitement from all of them. And also it was a really nice experience, sort of, I guess, bonding, because they, you know, they were diptych sisters, and, you know, one of them say, oh, you're my partner in the diptych. And it just created a really nice, I guess, more of a bonding across the two regions. So I'll stop screen sharing now, and you can play the second one, which is called Double Exposed. And can you take your sound off? So we can listen to the music too.
We bring together for you.
So yeah, so that was the Indian Photo Festival. Just showing you once again, I guess, for those who are interested in making the diptychs, some of getting to look at them a bit closer. Obviously, this is about the dancing and the colour. This one, once again, about colour and shape, and obviously about the eyes and the colour as well. So, you know, yeah, it's quite a process, but it's immensely rewarding. And I think that there's just so many talented women, which I hope we've managed to show. I guess eventually, at the end of the day, the most important thing is you're making these connections with people. Locally, it's meant I've got photographers I can go out with. As a woman, sometimes if you want to go out and shoot at night, you can't really do it on your own. So it's really nice to have met people to go shooting with. And then, you know, internationally, there's so many places you can go now because we have friends all over the place that you could meet up and go shooting with. And I think it's been part of the story of women street photographers now seeming to be represented a whole lot more in things like talking at festivals and judging at festivals and being included and invited to exhibit and so on. So I think that's sort of the end of my talk. There's a few little resources there. Unexposed Collective, obviously there are our details. Interestingly, Women in Street, there's now, after we've did our little regional ones, there's now a Women in Street in Japan, Women in Street Brazil, Women in Street Turkey, Women in Street Singapore. So it seems like now all these little regional groups are starting to come together so that women have got, you know, people to go out shooting with and talk to and bounce ideas off and share images and a lot of the things which maybe over the years we haven't felt so connected to do. Yeah.
Rebecca,
thank you.
I would like to thank you for this exciting presentation, for sharing some of your beautiful works with us, for telling us about the multi-talented people that you have had a chance to work with.
Yeah.
I only have one question for now. I would like to take you back to the beginning of your career, of your professional path. You have mentioned that you're a self-taught photographer. Does that mean well, I was wondering whether you had a hard time getting acknowledgement as a self-taught photographer from your colleagues? If you had your ups and downs like everyone does, I think it would be interesting to hear about them.
Yeah. I've been really lucky, I think, obviously very lucky to be in a position financially where I can travel and go on some workshops. So while my actual camera skills are self-taught, I've been able to meet and mix with some really good photographers. I've been on quite a few workshops with Maciej Dakowicz, the Polish street photographer, and rather than, there's less teaching and it's more about a bit of a travel adventure, but so a lot of good guidance, I guess. And I wouldn't say that I've had noticeably any too many problems. I just feel like as I've grown as a photographer, so has the exposure generally of women, and I just feel like I'm kind of part of that wave that's been going on, as opposed to feeling anything negative personally. Certainly, I do remember a few years ago, like I'm not a person to really engage in social media a lot, as in, you know, troll people or, well, definitely don't troll people, but, you know, get in and comment too much, you know, in controversial situations. But there was the Italian Street Photography Festival did its big announcement that it was, you know, for this year, this is, you know, about 3 years ago, and they listed all of the talkers and all of the judges, and there, of the 20 people they'd listed, there was not a single woman in all of the panels or anything. And for the first time in my life, I got on and I just typed a little word, like a few words, and I just said, your lack of gender diversity is a bit disappointing. And interestingly, from that, even though they didn't really comment on it, and they quickly, you know, over the week, because I'm sure I wasn't the only person that ended up commenting, but over the week, they quickly had two women on the agenda. But from that, I actually had a gentleman from France contact me and asked if I would like to help him get women together for an exhibition he was putting together with street photography. So I think in some ways being part of this has actually opened up more opportunities. I think generally for women photographers taking photos, I actually think we have an easier time of it than men because we are not threatening at all. And it's a lot easier for women to get photos of other women and children and families. And so I think when you're actually taking photos, I think women have a lot easier job of it than men. But when that goes to the other side of getting the work out there, then there was more of a challenge that way, I think, generally as a group. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that Andrew Glaskov, our curator, who is luckily with us now, he was able to join, has many more questions for you. We don't have much time left, but let me give floor to Andrew. And then if we still have time, we will keep answering questions from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi.
Happy to see you. Happy to see you, and happy to be a part of this process. And thank you for this fantastic presentation. That was just amazing.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, for me, it was important to bring people I know, and I had a chance to work with to this project, and your name was on top of the list. So I'm really happy that you were able to join us. Thanks. And when I was watching your presentation, you know, I thought that maybe you have in your collective, you have some kind of mentorship for young photographers. Do you do this kind of job?
Well, no, we don't actually. Well, I guess yes and no, because only a few nights ago, we had a similar meeting to this, and we invited 3 of the South Asian women to talk. And one of them is a very talented young Bangladeshi woman with not a lot of exposure outside of her country and even within her country. So I guess there's those sorts of opportunities and more for exhibitions. We do talk within our platforms about reviewing photos and answering questions, but not a direct mentorship. So I think that is a great suggestion. We did actually talk about doing, when we went to, before COVID, we were going to obviously go to India and Bangladesh and get together and do photo workshops and do some things a bit more like that. But of course, direct contact at the moment in those countries, particularly India, you know, it's just heartbreaking to see what's happening there. That's going to be on the back burner for a while.
Okay. Okay, nice. Well, I don't know. For me, it's always important, not only sometimes to give back, and mentorship could be a nice avenue for that. Just a thought, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, so when are we going to Baku again?
Yes. As soon as I can get on a plane out of Australia and get back again with no problems. It seems you can get out of the country, you just can't get back very easily.
Okay, I see. Well, the problem is also that you can't get into Azerbaijan right now. It's just closed still. Okay. So I hope that, yeah, one day it will be opened and we'll be able to get inside and take some nice pictures there again.
Oh, it would be fantastic. Oh,
And I think
Sure.
we're reading each other's thoughts because that was the question we started with.
yeah.
We really want Rebecca to come visit us in Baku.
Oh, I would
Yeah,
love to.
absolutely.
And I'd love to come and
Absolutely.
like meet some other street photographers there and, you know, go out shooting, and it would be fun. Be really fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with Yarat, we have such a great support there. So, I mean, next time we're there, we could do something bigger than just roaming streets and taking pictures. I mean, in collaboration, we can create something interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, so now I have one more question. What's your biggest advice for aspiring photographers?
I would say try and get to some workshops when you can with good photographers. Spend your money on good photography, good workshops, and good books. Like get books of good photographers and go through and study them and kind of almost imagine where you would have to have been to take the picture and what that was like. And particularly if you've got photographers and whose style of photo you really like and aspire to, I think that would be that spend your time like really exploring their work and what they did, because I think if you start to experiment similarly yourself, then you'll go to find your own version of your own style from there, and connect with people, of course. Can be a bit lonely being a street photographer. Sometimes you just wander out a lot by yourself. And while that is also good and good therapy, sometimes I find it's really good therapy, it's also really nice to connect with like-minded people and share the passion. It adds to the enthusiasm.
I think that's a great.
Yeah, and always some feedback always helps. I mean,
yes, yeah, feedback that you can
a,
trust.
Yeah, a bit critique
whole
and everything. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
your
Okay.
advice is be always thirsty for knowledge, stay connected to people, and be passionate about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah.
That's a great piece of advice. I wonder if anyone has any questions. Guys, raise your hands. We can unmute your microphones if you have any questions for Rebecca.
While people are deciding, I have this one book I was going to show.
Yeah.
If you are able to get your hands on it, it's a really beautiful book for street photography. It was made by that Australian photographer I mentioned, Narelle Autio, and she's married to Trent Park. He's a Magnum photographer and Australia's only Magnum photographer. And they did this book together. It's called The Seventh Wave. It's all in black and white film photography. But, you know, these beautiful photos that she does. I don't know if you can sort of see them there. But yeah, if you can ever get your hands on a copy of that somehow, it's a really beautiful book and a nice way to see the Australian coastline. There we go.
Well, I'll ask once again if anyone has any comments or questions. If not, we're going to wrap up at this. Thank you very much again, Rebecca, for your time.
And I think Inga has a question.
Oh, who has a question? Just a second. Yeah, please go ahead and ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Inga, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Rebecca.
Long time no see. I think it was, where were we? In Morocco somewhere.
Morocco, yeah, different groups, but we saw each other there. Yeah, that's right. No, I have a question about those diptychs. I mean, I love it. I have been looking at it and I think it's wonderful. But then what came to my mind is are you taking all the photos just as they are, or are you sometimes cropping to make them a better diptych together?
We try not to and prefer not to do any cropping.
Okay.
So I think for most of them, we ask for them to be supplied in a particular format.
Yeah.
The ones that didn't end up coming in that format, we asked the photographer if to resupply it in that format. So if they were going to do a crop or, you know, slightly change the ratio, for example, then they would need to do that themselves because we wouldn't want to do it. Of course, they had to all be landscape. So some people put in portrait, but we couldn't pitch a portrait in a landscape. So they automatically had to be landscape images. But we asked for the particular ratio. Yeah.
Well, I thought it very impressive, and I can imagine it has been an awful lot of work.
It was quite a lot of work. And it's interesting you should say that because, you know, we also didn't colour, like, you know, process anybody's images in any way. So sometimes to get a colour match is quite difficult when we've got different cameras, different lights, all of those things. So, yeah.
No, very impressive.
Thank you, Inga.
Welcome.
Lovely to see you again too.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope so.
Yeah, next time.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe our time is over, and that was the last question. So thank you, Inga. Happy to hear you. And yeah, Morocco trip was really nice and wonderful. And anyway, Rebecca, thanks. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, and thank you for supporting this event. I really appreciate it. And well, that's it for now.
Yeah,
That's
thanks
it
for
for
the
now.
opportunity. Good luck with the event. It looks fantastic. I had on the link that I shared, I had someone commenting that it was great to see how you had it lined up and the benefit for helping with the entries for people. So there seemed to be some real positive feedback for it. So that's fantastic. Well done.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm looking
So,
very much
okay.
forward to our next opportunity to speak to you.
Yes, hopefully in your country soon.
And host you in Baku, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Bye. Thanks for everything.